This is Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Here are your hosts, Dr. Tim Slekar and Dr. Johnny Lupinacci, educated educators talking education.
Yes, it is Monday. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. Johnny Lupinacci on the road, heading to a destination with the family. We'll be back on the show live with us tomorrow night. Jess, though, sitting in. Jess, how are you doing today?
I am so energized for today.
I know.
I'm so ready to be here.
Okay, really exciting moment, and I know everybody's like, "What?" We all know, but this is awesome. First of all, though, just reminding everybody, Busted Pencils, love this, is sponsored by Minocqua Brewing Company. Minocqua Brewing Company, who sued the state of Wisconsin to end that ridiculous, parasitically voucherous program. Yeah, getting rid of vouchers in Wisconsin. Minocqua Brewing Company is making Wisconsin great again, one beer at a time. Check out minocquabrewing.com to see where you can buy their progressive beer and their progressive wine and their progressive shirts and their progressive coffee cups. And just go there, Jess, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Have a good conversation. Engage in some small talk, which remember are 20 from the 20th.
Thank you. That's and it's just think about that. The role of the tavern in America as an institution. You think about that. It's like that is where things have started. And in fact, thinking all the way back towards the American Revolution, they say a lot of the impetus for the American Revolution came through in taverns at the time. So not saying that we want you to go to Minocqua Brewing Tap Room to create a revolution in that sense, but to have revolutionary thinking around ideas that continue to instill democracy and proclaim democracy. Hey, Minocqua Brewing Company, that's where you can go and do that, because if you don't want progressive beer, you can also have progressive soda. You can have
Progressive seltzer.
seltzer. It's all there, all of that. The other thing, Jess, too, is I'm so happy over the weekend I had, and this is just a reminder for everybody listening, download that Civic Media app. Wow. Because I had to go out of the area over the weekend, had to take my, mother-in-law back to Pittsburgh. And I tell you what, though, having that Civic Media app allowed me to get everything I needed from Civic Media. Most importantly, too, the alerts that came with it that let me know.
Were
Yeah.
able to keep up with everything
Yes,
yesterday?
yes, I got all that. So, hey, guess what? On top of being able to always listen to Busted Pencils or any of your favorite Civic Media shows, you can get that up-to-date breaking news. Speaking of which, Jess, up-to-date
Yeah.
breaking news. We left on Friday. We were imagining the possibilities. We got excited. We were like, whoa. And people are like, what are you talking about? Okay, look, quick. Yes, President Biden has voluntarily stepped down, opening up the opportunity now to have a new nominee. All right. That's the news. End of story. No, not end of story.
Start
Because
of story.
start of story. We've got so much to talk about here, because I just want to start by saying, do you remember Friday
Oh,
when
yeah.
when we started imagining President Biden stepping down, just moving over, saying so and so, and then we just went into this, well, yeah, if it's Kamala Harris, then this could be that great vice president. There could be, it just was a conversation starter that made us empowered. And none of that says that President Biden was a bad president. All of that said was as though there was a lack of an excitement factor there. And that worried me going into this election with Trump. Not saying that, none of Trump's policies would have turned people into voting for him who would have voted for Biden. There was no switch there. So there's no concern about going like, oh, Trump is going to win over all these Biden people. No, 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 no.
No. The people who were going to vote for Trump were always going to vote for Trump.
Right.
It was everyone who was in the middle. It was everyone who was looking at this situation and going, I don't connect to either of these candidates. Neither of these candidates are representative of me, what I believe, my situation. And there was just so much disengagement. so much lethargic energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So many
And
people
you
just,
say,
yeah.
yeah, you think, my son and his girlfriend, they're 24. I'm not exactly sure. And they're they weren't excited. And that people are like, well, they're not very civically minded. I'm like, no, you've got an 81-year-old and a 78-year-old. You've got a crazy 78-year-old who's spouting off crazy stuff. You've got an 81-year-old who now they're looking at going like, wow, he's really slowed down. And neither one of them excites me. I was just, I was talking to my son Luke, and he's like, that's where it was. My daughter Lacey, who's 21, you know, not that they don't want to be engaged, but sorry, these two presidential candidates together didn't create a sense of excitement about saying, I want to be a part of this. And that was where we were going Friday when we started imagining if President Biden would step down. What does that mean? Well, it could mean that Kamala Harris now is going to be the new nominee. And that means who's she going to pick for a running mate? And that's kind of cool because LA Tom loves the guy, the governor from North Carolina. Johnny Lupinacci, who's really pulling hard for the Michigan
For Gretchen Whitmer.
Gretchen Whitmer. I'm now kind of getting along this idea. I'm reading more about Andy Beshear in Kentucky because he kind of goes like the true Kentucky anti-JD Vance.
Hey, Tim, you know the name that I just heard yesterday and now I'm really, really excited about? Governor Tony Evers.
Oh.
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 Ooh, public education, super strong advocate, brings the Midwest, would not seek the presidency afterwards.
Any listeners who have the history of knowing me, though, on that one are going like, uh-oh, Jess, you know that Tim and Governor Evers have had their issues in the past.
Oh, yeah, you butt heads?
Yeah, because he's not been as clear, especially when it comes to vouchers. Has not delivered in that way. However, well, you know what? But this is the possibilities that we're talking about.
Yeah, now we can have conversations.
Yeah, we can have conversations. And I can imagine, if we were having this conversation at the Minocqua Brewing Company at the tap room, we'd be like, I'm like, Jess, I got to tell you, I like Governor Evers in the sense, but, we can have these really impactful conversations where I kind of like, I had heard about Governor Beshear in Kentucky. I didn't know a whole lot about him. But because we can now think this way legally, right? Whatever legally means, I did some more digging and I kind of like this anti-JD Vance or kind of like the true Kentucky, Appalachian voice and kind of going like, how do you contrast those two? And it's like, that's exciting. Didn't mean, oh my God, that's my winner. But it just was this just like, wow, there's possibilities. And even now, I don't know if you're a listener right there, you're going, so you've essentially given in to Kamala Harris. I'm like, I haven't given in to anybody. It feels like that seems like the direction it's going to go. But I do know as soon as like 10 minutes ago, what the latest news is that there isn't a guaranteed commitment to anybody at
right.
this
is
point.
not going to be a coronation.
Right.
What I'm seeing in every breaking news feed is commitment after commitment to saying we are going to have a convention where we nominate someone. It is going to be a vote. It's going to be a discussion. It's going to be democracy in action.
What? Wait. Oh, we'll talk about that later. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we didn't hear a bell.
No, it's not going to be a coronation, and that's great. You know what? And I gotta say, when President Biden had that horrible, awful, no good, very bad day on the debate day,
that's one way to describe it.
Well, actually, if you know that there's a children's book referred to that.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Just making sure. So it was just like that, and I was kind of like, oh my God, this is horrible. He can't run. I wasn't in that moment going, and therefore I think Kamala Harris should be the nominee. I was potentially excited about actually her not being and imagining the possibility of like a Gretchen Whitmer, like a Gavin Newsom. I got to say now over these times now, I'm feeling kind of connected to going, I think the Kamala Harris nomination actually is kind of starting to excite me.
I think here, my personal take
Yeah.
is you stick with Kamala. She has the experience. She has been in this high office now for 3.5 years, going on 4 years. She's been training, she's been preparing to, at any moment, become president of the United States. I'm really excited about the prospect of Kamala leading the ticket and finding someone else to round it out.
I love it. You know what really got me in that direction? So one of our great guests that we've had on the show, talk about a public education advocate, Dr. Diane Ravitch, was reading her blog last night, and she gave a really nice thank you to President Biden, and she really positioned Kamala Harris as her choice, and then started envisioning vice presidents, and she made the connection to a Gretchen Whitmer and Kamala Harris ticket. And something about the way Dr. Ravitch presented that in her blog last night landed on me where I went, that just feels so empowering. So, a minority women, 2 women. It wow, it just changes everything. All these crappy old white guys, of which I'm a decently towards the end of middle-aged white guy. I'm one of those people.
But you're not
I'm
crappy.
tired. No, but I'm tired of my kind. We're predictable. It's exciting. However, as we're coming back, Busted Pencils Fully Leaded Education Talk, educated educators talking education. What does this do, though, now in the situation? Because people are going, so what happens? What is legal when we come back?
Well, Tim,
Up-
it is almost any way that you want it.
Oh, I hear that. Any way you want. Well, come back any way you want it. Let's see if that is the way you'll get it. Welcome back, Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk, educated educators talking education. Any way you want it, that's the way we left the segment. Is that the way you're going to get it? I don't know, but I'm going to bring something to you. Jess and I are happy. Johnny Lupinacci will be back tomorrow with us. He's on a family trip today. Wish him safety in the drive. He's going to be there, but we will be back tomorrow with Johnny and Jess, the whole team. We're going to bring it. But Jess, exciting. I remember
So
we
exciting.
were on Friday. Just so remember, we're talking about Biden has voluntarily stepped down. We are now in the process of being allowed to be excited the way we are imagining being excited on Friday. We can now really do it, and it's exciting to imagine. The other possibility, though, too, is to say, oh, so what is this moment in time and the reality of, hey, guess what, Busted Pencils? It's about education. This is a good opportunity to kind of put this out there and say, as you're coming back to the fall, teachers and students and parents, what is the civics lesson here? What is the history lesson here? They are there. And so people know I like to dabble in AI and play around and it's like a colleague, it's a tool, and I ask it some things when we go back. So I don't know, I'll give you a little bit of a read here, Jess, and see what you think about this. We've got a riveting topic that ties together 2 monumental moments in American political history. We're going to explore the striking similarities between President Lyndon Johnson's decision to not seek re-election in 1968 and President Joe Biden's recent announcement to step down from the 2024 presidential race. That was me literally sitting down with my chat and saying, this moment, President Biden has stepped down. I'm a 11th grade history teacher. How do I present this to my kids? That's the first little kind of thing. It says, well, here, try this paragraph. I love this because comparison to similar moments in time is typically my preferred way of teaching history and civics, is to say what we're living now. Can we look at it from an event in the past to help the past give us a sense of now? I think that's excellent history, social studies teaching.
Oh, of course. I mean, we have that standard saying that, the past doesn't repeat, history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme.
But it rhymes and it gives us a sense to say to a connection. And I will tell you this, though, too, from the teaching standpoint, truly coming at this as a history teacher and social studies teacher, I can say that this format of connecting the past to the present, I've seen it be much more celebrated by my students in saying, I like it when you do that, Mr. Slekar. I was Mr. Slekar at those times. I like when you start with something that's happening today and then you go, oh yeah, well, check it out. Back when, because it illustrates and it really gave them a sense. And so we do have that right now. 1968, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, decided not to run for another term. So people's like, what do we do in this situation? Well, what happened then?
And
is
it
good
takes away a lot of the sort of panic and the feeling of this is totally unprecedented. Nothing like this has ever happened before. We have no guides. And you can say, hold on, take a breath. We do have guides.
We have guides. And actually, too, as you dig into this one, you kind of say, wow. So here's the famous quote from LBJ. I shall not seek, I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president. So as I'm coming after that, then as a teacher in this teaching moment, we now know that this quote, I'd ask the students, how do you know who said this? Kind of like we do Tim's trivia on Friday, and some of them would find it. Like, okay, what was it that led LBJ to make that statement? What happened? Did he wake up in the morning on the wrong side of the bed and say, hey, I'm not doing it? No. I always throw out that kind of ridiculous stuff. What was happening in 1968? What was going on? Well, this is in the height of the Vietnam War. Okay. President Johnson, the mood of the country was very anti-war, and that was coming across at that moment. And there was a sense very similar to today that he was not able to be reelected in that sense. Yeah, you heard that little ding there? I know people are like,
breaking news.
Breaking news. No, it's you know what the breaking news was? Just Tim always, leaving his phone on during the show. Sorry about that. No, but the other breaking news, but it's the same. It's the same thing. So you say Johnson believed that stepping aside was in the best interest of the nation, allowing him to focus on unity and peace efforts. So he's like, oh, so what did President Biden? Now, this is where I'd say, well, here's what President Biden said. While it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the rest of my term. Okay, so there's the two statements. I shall not seek, I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president. What was going on? Not very popular at that moment, and there was a lot of things that were moving in a direction that went, wait, there's a really good chance that President Johnson just doesn't have the support of the people. That didn't mean that people said, like although there was a lot of disagreement there. People were saying, oh, well, but Biden did such a good job up to this point. I don't understand. It's like nobody's saying he didn't do a good job. But we're pointing out that at this moment, Jess and Tim and Johnny for the last 2 weeks have been really excited about the possibility of somebody else. That infectiousness was the three of us, Jess.
And that was playing out across the country.
I was going to say, Jess, and it wasn't just the three of us talking.
Right.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was a groundswell of people saying this is probably not in the best interest.
And so many of those voices are coming from people who have been really staunch Biden supporters and people who are able to recognize Biden has served incredibly as president. Biden has achieved amazing things as president. And it's time.
It's time. And we said we saw that at the debate. And even then, I was very quick at the debate to say, okay, he needs to be done. People are like, wait, give him a chance. Well, guess what? He did have a chance. He went on George Stephanopoulos. He went on Lester Holt. And none of it was, oh my God, that was just a kind of fluke thing that he had this bad day. It was a horrible, no good, very bad day.
That turned into weeks, and
it just kept going, and it was peering into of going like, yeah, this is not it. We say, why does this matter? And as a social studies and history teacher, the combining these events, looking at them, historical moments, let's bring them back together. Got a little bit more to talk about. So when we come back, we're going to finish up this history lesson and then possibly talk about democracy in action. We get around. That's what we do here every night. Talking about our generation, your generation, busted pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. Talking about another great song about generation. Generation X, which was Billy Idol's first band before Billy Idol became Billy Idol. They were called Generation X, which is where Gen X comes from. The band called Generation X. I don't know if you know this, Jess.
I did not know that.
Okay, so Generation X gets its name from Billy Idol's first punk band, which they called themselves Generation X. And on that very first punk album that they released, there's also a song called My Generation. And it was influenced by that song that was originally done by The Who about, again, the situation. So, wow, so much learning going on today. Who knew that on top of talking about the reality of President Biden giving us the opportunity to be imaginative, excited, and the reality of a combined history lesson. What can we learn from history? In 1968, this did happen. Lyndon Baines Johnson did step down from didn't step down from the presidency, because we want to get that, said, I'm not going to go for it again. I'm done. So in other words, what President Biden has said is that in January, during the transition to the next president, he's done.
Correct.
So what he's done is he gave us the 2-week notice in advance. Okay, so he was being very generous and cooperative by saying, hey, look, when my contract is over, it's it. All right. We were talking about history, and we say, like, let's find moments in history that are similar to the things that are happening today, because drawing comparisons and contrasting too, again, what's alike, what's different, we do both, really helps it embed in our minds how to understand this. The other question now too is going, okay, there's a civics lesson here too, Jess, which, we just did the history lesson. I'm trying to do a social studies encompassing talk about this. So we did history, civics. The U.S. Constitution, though, on this, people are like, what do we do? What are the rules? Well, guess what? The U.S. Constitution does not have rules and procedures for this type of an event. It lays out what we do for presidential elections. It lays out what we do for presidential succession. Does not addressly direct the scenario when a sitting president voluntarily steps down. Okay. So that could be the end of story, right?
Well, I mean, we have procedures for a president resigning, do we not?
We have a succession. It's not really the resigning. It's this whole idea of saying, I'm done at the end of my contract. Because even in a resignation, that requires a succession,
I mean, this
right?
almost sounds like a non-issue. You
Well,
finish a contract, you finish your contract.
I would say you and I talked about this earlier before the show. It's like because one of the ways the Republicans are going to come at this is going, Joe Biden can't quit. He's not allowed. That's against the rules. It's like, well, wait a minute. I can wake up any morning and say, I ain't doing it anymore.
I hope you're not
It,
talking about busted
no,
pencils.
no. But I mean, it's just like, wait a minute. Really? Really? You're going to say he's not allowed to quit. That's why it's called quitting. I, don't say you're not allowed. Now, they potentially saying the Constitution doesn't have policies and procedures when a sitting president decides not to go for re-election. Well, that could be the issue. What? Yeah, there it is. That's that bell. We can do it without Johnny Lupinacci. Yes, that's democracy in action.
Woo!
It's time. Woo! Tim and Jess can do this. So, Jess, our moment, our democracy in action. I am so glad you and I talked about this one because I thought about this and boy, I tell you, yours is the absolute best. In fact, give us, Jess, take it away. What do you think is our democracy in action event today?
Today's democracy in action. Our value is patriotism, loving your country and the values that it stands on. And this is in reference to President Joseph R. Biden, recognizing his limitations and opening the door for so much democracy to be in action.
Wow. Truly patriotism. And that's it. The ability, because it had to have been so hard.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a man who has dedicated 5 decades to public service.
And for those of you who don't know what decades mean, that means 50 years. Some people may not have had the decade part of their 50 years, though. And he's been great, too. Here's the contrast with LBJ.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, LBJ, the war on poverty, the civil rights, like that was great stuff. But that Vietnam War was such an albatross that it was just like, no matter what the good was that he did, he just couldn't get out from that. Here, the difference here, President Biden, they say this is why he gets our democracy in action, patriotism. Talk about being a patriot is that things have been going great. He has been a great president. He has delivered on so many.
He has been a steady leader.
Yes.
He has brought unity.
Coming out of an incredibly horrendous pandemic, coming out of the chaos of the person beforehand, trying to create a whole smokescreen around this was illegitimate, creating, truly up against constant divisiveness, but still putting forward policy after policy, moving the ball, moving it up the field, making things better for people, not getting trapped. I mean, this has been a president who has been fully engaged. And so, the whole idea of stepping down when somebody's kicking butt, because that's really the reality. He's been kicking butt. And so he's stepping down. Well, because the reality that happened on that night is that if we're going to continue to see the progress in the policies that he advocates for, it's evident now that someone else needs to pick up the torch, as they've been saying.
Right. But to have that humility, we've talked a lot on this show the past couple of weeks about, really, really good education, really good connection with people requires that level of humility to recognize when you yourself are not the one who is best suited to do something,
Oh.
to step down and let someone else hold that space.
And that's, you say, President Biden, that's why you get busted pencils democracy in action. Let's call it an award today,
Yeah.
because truly being able to illustrate for those of us learning what it is to be a patriot. It is not necessarily getting, these colors don't run and all the stuff that people try to imagine. Patriotism is being selfless, truly.
Right. It's not
You
about
know,
how big your flag is.
no, this is about a moment and going, the country, the people of which I love, it's going to be better if I'm humble enough to recognize that in this moment, someone else should go forward. Man, that is an illustration truly of patriotism. So, our democracy in action goes to President Biden, the value patriotism. Jess, thank you so much for steering me into that one today.
My pleasure. And thank you, Biden.
Yes, thank you, President Biden. We appreciate it. Now, though, Jess, so how do we do with the civics? We've got to come back to this because we understand the history, the contrast, the comparison to LBJ. There isn't anything in the rule book. And when I say the rule book, the U.S. Constitution is our rule book when it comes to civics. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you say, so go to page 3. When a president says, I'm not going to seek the nomination, paragraph B, no, there are no paragraph B, subsection E on this situation. There is election law, there is succession law. And so there are things we have to draw on that. So presidential succession, there is the 25th Amendment, and the 25th Amendment outlines the procedures for presidential succession, Jess, and this is in the case of death, resignation, removal from office, or incapacitation. Okay, so that's why it doesn't really meet up to the going, well, what happens when they resign? They didn't put that one in there. They didn't think about the whole idea of resigning. So what do you do with that then? And you go, well, can we look at it for guidance? Can we look at and then we look at the presidential elections. The Constitution sets a framework for presidential elections, but also doesn't specify procedures if a sitting president decides to not run for a second term. Oh my goodness, our Constitution now 2 times doesn't help us. And I can imagine now too, they're going to say that's why he can't quit. That's why it's against the law to quit, because there's no law that allows him to quit.
I mean, I have
know.
some strong objections to that. And I think you can look at very early American history for guidance on that. Some of our first presidents only served 1 term.
Yes. Yeah. The whole idea that he can't do that. Yes,
Sure,
he
he can.
He can. And in fact, we're going to look at this moment and say, but the role of political parties. The Constitution doesn't address internal processes of political parties, but the political parties do have internal processes for these events. And so at this point, as a constitutional scholar, if I were one, I'd be citing the 25th Amendment, I'd be citing election laws, and then saying this then guides me to the parties, to draw from the parties what it is that they say happens in this event. And there is language to say, here's what happens. And guess what? It becomes actually, I know people are going to overcomplicate this in the next few weeks. Don't fall for it. The reality is that they can nominate someone new at the convention, and everybody can agree that that's the nomination. And then that new person who gets the nomination can stand up on that last night and say, I accept your nomination. Ta-da.
Sometimes it really does not have to be overly complicated.
Right. It's guess what? Sorry. It can happen. And I'm sorry is even the wrong word, but as we're coming to this, though, that is really what's going to be, though, you're going to hear a lot of people going, well, what do we do now? What do we do next? What do the rules say? Well, it's very simple. There isn't constitutional precedent that we're going to use here. We're going to have some guidance from the 25th Amendment that says, hey, guess what? People do kind of, they become incapacitated, they die, they resign. Okay, can we use this to say, hey, and guess what? They can stop at the end of their contract, yeah, we can use that. We can look to election law. And election law then kind of draws us into going, do the parties have processes in place? Yes, they do. And so, really, right now, it's up to the Democratic Party to put together a plan for how this is going to happen. What I'm hearing now, as we're early into this, is that it feels like there seems to be some growing support for Kamala Harris ticket. However, there has been we're not sure yet though, because it still is a procedure. And in fact, it is a convention. And what you just heard me say, the convention could allow for people to even if Kamala Harris gets somehow put forth, she still has to accept the nomination. And there is the possibility that some people at the Democratic National Convention could even at that moment say, we want to put so-and-so up instead, and they can
Absolutely.
lose, right. So nothing is written, but there it is. We can put this forward. I think now too, the positive and the happiness and the excitement that Jess and I and Johnny and LA Tom and all of the callers, Mark from Prairie du Sac, thinking about Joanne, all of our callers, thinking about now going, I am so excited to be excited.
Yeah.
It's like people are like, what are you so excited about? I'm
I've
excited
never
because
been so energized on a Monday.
I'm excited because I'm allowed to be excited. And for a while I was thinking, man, all right, the excitement, so much more when we get back. Of course, you always get it any way you want it. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk, educated educators talking education. Jess in the house, Dr. Tim in the house, Dr. Johnny. One night, he'll be back tomorrow though. Biden, the big news over the weekend, Sunday, yesterday. Yes, Jess, my phone went nuts. I got the civic media alert that this happened. My daughter was like, Dad, did you hear?
Oh my
I get a
goodness.
text from Lupinacci. I got a text from Jess. And it's like, as you said, it was just like, it lifted me
Yeah.
in a way. And people are like, are you just like, why would this lift you up? It's like, because I wasn't excited about seeing those two go at it. I mean,
Mhm.
nothing about that said, oh, I was leaning towards Trump or something like that. It wasn't that. It was just like, oh, this art, it's so old, it's so stale, it's so
Mhm.
we know where it's gonna go. And you know what? I just want to feel like there's something tangible now that like the things that we talk about here on Busted Pencils matter. And I believe they do matter. But sometimes there is this kind of like a moment in time where you're going, well, things are just the way they are and they're just not going to get. No, we kept pushing and going, we want things to be a different way.
Yep.
And it's, hey, did that influence the national conversation, Busted Pencils? Of course it did.
Absolutely. Of course
My
it
goodness.
did. We know
Of
they were
course.
listening on the Civic Media
Yes,
app.
Civic Media app. The Biden re-election team was paying attention to us, and they're like, "Hey, those guys are they love President Biden. They're just saying they want to be excited." And thank you, Biden re-election team, for listening to Busted Pencils out there, because man, we are so excited here. But so much to go. LBJ. This is when it happened. So yes, it has happened in the past. We know
Mhm.
what we can do. Well, what are the rules? Well, we go to the Constitution. Well, the Constitution doesn't necessarily lay out direct rules very specifically for this situation,
Mhm.
but it gives us some guidance. And it typically says, hey, or not typically, it says, go to your parties. Parties have all kind of rules for how you can continue to party. Well, on this continuation of the party, the Democratic committee that puts together the convention has rules. So the Democratic National Committee handles the selection and nomination of any new candidates, ensuring compliance with federal and state election laws to place the new nominee in the ballot. Okay. So there are rules. I'm seeing a text from Jess here. We had a question in the studio a bit ago about the qualifications for being VP. Can
Yeah,
you
we
talk to that?
we
Yeah.
had we
Okay.
had so we were talking a little bit when I came into the studio today, and what we're seeing a lot from Republicans right now is, one, we're seeing them saying, Biden, you've got to step down now. If you can't
Yeah.
run for re-election, then you can't be president. And that's nonsense. That's nonsense. The other part is, well, we're going to be investigating Kamala Harris very, very thoroughly to make sure that
Oh,
she is, she meets the qualifications to run for president. And my initial thought was, the most sacred duty of being vice president is that you assume the presidency should the president not be able to fulfill their duties. Therefore, does someone need to fit those same requirements in order to be vice president as president?
yes.
Okay.
This is a non-starter, Jess, but I knew they were going to go there with this. This goes back to their Obama
Oh,
birtherism
yeah.
bull.
I said,
Okay.
immediately, like, this is just,
Yeah.
yeah, this is
This
a replay.
this is a replay. This is all this birther crap around the idea that, her parents maybe were over here. Was she really born? Is she officially? This is coming down to this BS, and we'll just say it like that. The bull, around creating a story around something where there isn't a story. Is Kamala Harris a citizen the way the Constitution says you have to be able to serve as vice president? The answer is yes. She has already served as vice president. Therefore, that legal threshold has been met, summed up, and guaranteed, and we're now going forward. There is no, whoa, she wasn't qualified for the whole last 3.5 years. Bull. Okay. If there truly was, and there are qualifications to be a congressman, there are qualifications to be a senator, and those are laid out in the Constitution. When this comes up, though, this comes up around this idea of a natural born citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the crap they tried doing to Obama. This is racism.
It is,
That's all
absolutely.
I was gonna say. I mean, let's be honest. You're not trying to to just point out a legitimate potential issue. No, you're not. You're being a racist.
Yep.
That's what you're doing. You're being a racist, and you're trying to cloud your racism or shroud your racism in policy and procedure, of which there is no policy and procedure. You're a racist. Just come out and go, look, I'm a racist, and I would like for that woman who's not my race, I would like her not to run because she's not my race. That's my issue. I got a racial problem with this person. Can we take her off the ticket because I'm a racist? The answer
The
is
answer is
no.
no.
No, we cannot take her off the ticket. You're allowed to be a racist.
Well, I mean,
I know,
allowed
there's
to, I suppose, should be. No.
Yeah, but there are no rules stopping you from being a racist. However, there are rules that say you can't try to create policy around the idea that you're just simply a bigot and a jerk and a crappy person who should just actually go back to take my social studies classes when I was teaching second grade so I can reacquaint you to what it's like to be a contributing member of the human race.
And to be part of this incredible country that is so bursting with diversity, and that's not a bad thing. That is the
No,
most beautiful thing about our country.
it is. You made me think quickly too over the weekend. I sent you a little note talking about this. I was really surprised at the movie I sent you, which is Hail Satan.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of ending that, but boy, it made an interesting point about pluralism and diversity in this country, and it just lifted it up. So, Jess, man, thank you all, you especially, for busting pencils with me tonight.
Yeah.
Check it out, though. Yeah, we'll have more and more on this story as it continues to build. And any civics and history lesson that comes up, yes, busted pencils. Stay tuned because we'll continue to be talking about this all week.